everyone. It's great to have you with us tonight, especially to have Father Luke, our very special guest. I'll begin with a prayer, as I always do. I'll introduce Father Luke, tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll jump right into this very exciting program. I've lit my votive candle, as you know. I always do that. It's got 3 candles in there. I still don't know how they do that, but there's 3 wicks in there. I guess 1 for each member, each person of the Holy Trinity. Heavenly King and Comforter, the Spirit of truth, everywhere present and filling all things, the treasure of blessings and the giver of life, come and dwell in us, cleanse us of every stain, and save our souls, O good one. Good evening, everyone. Good day from wherever you're joining us. Let me introduce to you our very special guest, a good friend, a beloved pastor. Father Luke Veronis has served the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese for the past 26 years. For the past 16 years, he's pastored Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Webster, Massachusetts. Simultaneously, he directs the Missions Institute of Orthodox Christianity at Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology, where he teaches as an adjunct professor at both Hellenic College and Holy Cross. He serves on the board of directors for the Orthodox Christian Mission Center. Father Luke has been involved in the Orthodox Church's missionary movement since 1987. Together with his presbytera, he served as a missionary in post-communist Albania for 10.5 years and in East Africa for 18 months. He has led 9 short-term mission programs from his church to work at Project Mexico, building homes for the poor in Tijuana, Mexico, as well as annually offers a course since 2010 at Hellenic College Holy Cross, which includes Mission Practicum to Albania. He's published numerous works. Father Luke, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Father Chris. It's great to join you.
You have done something very, very unique. Tell us what you've done. And I think the basic question will be, why did you do what you do? Because everyone, at least those who come to OCN, want to see relevance to the church. How do we take Christ and put the Holy Trinity within the body of our lives, our neighborhood, our world? So please, give us a little intro.
So, Father Chris, if I can begin, I'll let everyone know that I pastor the Church of Saints Constantine and Helen Church in Webster, in central Massachusetts. And when I came here 16 years ago, I was the 43rd priest in its 85-year history. 43rd priest in 85-year history. So this year, in November of 2019, we began celebrating our 100th anniversary as a community in Central Mass. And because of COVID, we were supposed to end our celebration last November, but COVID delayed that celebration. And so we postponed it. And this upcoming November, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary. So we are an old Greek immigrant community. Actually, it was founded by Greeks and Albanians. We existed as a typical Greek Orthodox church for 85 years or so. When I came back in 2005, it was a church that was struggling, that some people could say was dying, was uncertain about its future. That's another story. But I just want to give you the context. So when we celebrated our 100th anniversary, we are a church that from its struggling reality back in 2005, we had a beautiful, exciting turnaround situation where we doubled our congregation, where we became this healthy, vibrant. I dare to say what the church was prior was a typical inward turned, trying to survive, yet struggling and slowly dying church. And what we've tried to do in the last 15 years is give the church a vision to be relevant, as you just said, Father Chris, to be relevant in society. We are placed in central Massachusetts in the little town of Webster to be a blessing to other people. So this we've been working on for the last 15 years. How do we become relevant? How do we become outward turning? How do we become vibrant and dynamic? And so as a means of celebrating our 100th anniversary, we wanted to start with start in a special way, and then conclude our 100th anniversary in a special way. So what we did in November of 2019, on our Stewardship Sunday, which typically on Stewardship Sunday in churches, that's when the priest will give a talk about stewardship, supporting the church with your time, talents, and treasure, and asking maybe the congregation to fill out a stewardship form. How are we going to give financially, time wise, talent wise to the church? And that's what I've done for the previous 14 years. But what we did on this special Stewardship Sunday to kick off our 100th anniversary is instead of receiving stewardship cards, we gave all the parishioners in the church an envelope. And whoever wasn't in the church, we sent them an envelope. And inside the envelope, we gave all of our parishioners cash. If you are married with children, we gave you $300 cash. If you are a couple, $200 cash. If you're single, $100 cash. We gave out $30,000 as a gift from the church to our parishioners. And then we said, this is the church offering you a blessing. Now we ask you to do something.
Was anyone conscious after you did that, or did they pass out?
Well, people were quite surprised because we didn't let anybody know. The parish council knew what we were doing. No one else knew what we were doing.
Amazing.
So we gave out the cash and we said, there's only two things we ask of you. Number one is use this gift that we're giving you to bless somebody in need. If you yourself are in need, keep the money and use it however you want. But if you're not in need, look around and find somebody in need and go bless them and tell them this is a gift from God, from our church, blessing you. We want to share our blessings.
Unreal.
So that's the first thing we asked. And then the second thing we said is, with this blessing, we also want you to tell us after you do whatever you want to do, tell us what you did. So we gathered dozens and dozens of stories of what people did. And one of the things we said is, if you want to be creative, use the gift in a creative way to increase the money. And then you have more money to give a blessing to other people. So one person in our church used with her family her $300, and they held some type of bake sale, some type of thing, and they got $1,000. And then they had $1,000 to use, and they used it to help a homeless shelter. Some people told me they reached out to a homeless person for the first time in their life, meeting a person, taking them out for lunch, giving them something. And then numerous people said, well, the church gave us $200 and we added 200 of our own dollars to give $400 to whatever cause or person. But it was a beautiful way. The whole point of what some people in our church said to me, Father, is this a gimmick that you're doing? And I said, no, it's not a gimmick. It's a way that I want to teach. This is a teaching lesson. I want to teach people that when we're blessed by God, we want to share our blessings with other people. God doesn't bless us to keep it ourselves. He blesses us so that we go out and share the blessing with other people, glorify God with whatever we do. And I can tell you that for some of the people in my church, maybe it was the first time they ever looked for someone in need,
Right. To
gave
give.
them a gift, and they discovered the joy of giving. Some people came back to me and told me the feeling that they had when they gave and they reached out to this person in need, or this family in need, or some people really prayed about it and then took their time, and then they encountered a family with a very special need and they reached out. So, and then other people told me, wow, well, I gave to this organization, I met them, I told them what we were doing, and now I'm giving regularly to this organization. So
Sure.
this is the way we kicked off our 100th anniversary. So we want to celebrate. We've been a community for 100 years. We are a community that God has placed in Central Massachusetts to bless Central Massachusetts, to bless the United States, to bless the global world church and the world around us in whatever small way that we can, because we're a small church. So we began our 100th anniversary that way. And then we had COVID hit and all the challenges of COVID and the struggles and difficulties, but also the blessings of COVID. And so we're now coming to the end of our 2 years celebration, our 100th anniversary. And so we said, what else can we do to get across to our own people what our responsibility and privilege is. How can we bless the world around us? So, over the last 2 years, I've seen from time to time in Facebook and in the New York Times, I heard a story on NPR about churches that would pay off the medical debt for random families, random individuals, churches that would pay off $2 million, $3 million of debt
Wow.
for individuals. And so I was really intrigued by that. When I first heard it, I said, boy, that's something I want our church to do
Mhm.
one day.
Yeah.
And so I got some information. I learned about this nonprofit organization called RIP Medical Debt. RIP Medical Debt. And so there's been numerous stories in the New York Times and the national media and NPR and other sources about not only churches, about individuals that had done this. And what RIP medical debt is, it's two former executives who worked for debt collection agencies.
Hmm.
And they realized what debt collection is all about. And then they created a nonprofit in, I think, 2015, where they realized you can pay off debt, you can buy up debt, and then pay it off a penny to the dollar, a
Mhm.
penny to the dollar. So you give a donation, and then that donation is exponentially 100 times
Explodes, sure.
increased. So I made contact with this RIP medical debt, and the connection with what we did at the beginning of our 100th anniversary with that when we gave away $30,000, we called that the Good and Faithful Steward Challenge. We were challenging our people to be good and faithful stewards with the gift that the church gave them. How are you going to use that in a way to glorify God in a good and faithful way? So the beauty of this is that somebody who was not a part of our church, but who had a relative a part of our church, they heard about what we did. They were so inspired by what we did. And around a year after our Good and Faithful Steward Challenge, this person made a donation to our church. And he said to me, Father, I was so inspired by what your church did in that Good and Faithful Steward Challenge, giving $30,000, reaching out, blessing the community at large.
Yes.
But I want to make a donation to you, and I would love if you could use part of this donation to do something special, bless the
Mhm.
community at large in a similar way. And so we received his donation. I talked to my parish council. What can we do? We thought what, so we used a portion of his donation and we contacted the RIP debt relief.
Mhm.
And we ended up giving a donation that wiped out $3.5 million of medical debt for 2,200 families. And we were able to select families that lived in the Northeast in New England,
Mhm.
because we wanted people around our area
Right.
in New England. And these families, the RIP medical debt gave me a report of how many families from what county, how much money was eliminated. So, for example, I'm from Worcester County in Massachusetts, and they said something like in Worcester County, there were 20 families for $50,000 of debt that were wiped out. And each of these 2,200 families received a letter. Surprisingly, they had no clue this was going to happen. They received a letter in the mail that says, Dear Father Metropolis, your debt of $15,000, which you haven't been, they didn't say this, which hasn't been, you haven't been able to pay for the
Right.
last 2 or 3 years, and that has destroyed your credit rating and everything else. Your debt of $15,000 has been wiped out by Saints Constantine and Helen, Greek Orthodox Church in Webster, Massachusetts. No strings attached. This is a gift from RIP Medical Debt and Saints Constantine and Helen, Greek Orthodox Church.
Wow. That's a tremendous story. And you talk about bringing the gospel to the streets. I mean, good Lord, what a fantastic, RIP stands for rest in peace, probably, I guess. I'm not
Rest in
sure.
peace. That's right. Rest in
Rest in peace.
peace.
Yeah. Um, Father, I know that people are going to ask you questions. I want to just give you a chance to catch your breath there because you've given us a lot of information. And I want to encourage those of you who are watching us and listening to us both on your iPhones or through the Zoom or whatever, through Facebook, that you please put your questions in the chat room so that Noel can recognize you as we go forward. Father, let me ask you this question because I'm sure it's going to come up. We could talk about the successes, which were obviously it worked, and that's to the glory of God. What were some of the challenges you faced? Because I can imagine that this turns the, what's the word? Not the prism, but the actual structure, if you will, of the way the normal parishes function on its head. I mean, it's totally different. The one that you said about you gave, the parish gave money to people. I mean, that's like, whoa, wait a minute. You give money to us, we give money to you. I know in Japan, when they pass a tray, people clap. In America, when they pass a tray, people go, oh, forget it, right? Because they don't want to deal with giving the money. Here you are, you gave money to people, but they had to take it and do something with it. That's to the glory of God. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges you faced, Father.
So I would refer more to the challenges I had 15 years ago when I came to this community and the mentality, just the worldview that the church had, which was, I would say, probably a typical view of many of our churches, which is the church is there to take care of its own people. We have festivals and fundraisers where we get money from other people to take care of our own bills and our own operational budget. And so it's very inward turned. So I remember when I came to this church in 2005, it was still a church on the dues system. We actually had a budget. I arrived at this church of $64,000. That's a total budget. And it was an inward turned church. So the first budget that I worked on with my parish council, I said to them, I would like 3 line items, or actually 4 line items put in the budget. A line item first for global missions, second for national missions, third for local missions, and fourth, a priest discretionary fund that I can have to give to people in need when people come to the church asking for help and asking for money. Those 4 things. And I'll never forget, one of my dear parish council members, he said to me, Father, do you mean we're going to send money to Africa or Albania or Mexico or somewhere like that? We're going to send money out there when we can't even pay our bills for our church. How are we going to do that? Why are we going to do that? And I said to him, listen, we have to understand what it means to be the church. And when we truly be the church, which means be the body of Christ, the light of Christ that shines to the world around us, when we understand that, what's going on in the Church of Africa, in Kenya, in Indonesia, in Mexico, in Pakistan, and other places where there are Orthodox churches, when we understand that church there is our church, and we have a responsibility. And so when we're giving a donation or we're giving help to a global part of the global church, when we be the church, you won't worry about paying bills, paying the lighting, paying the utilities. We won't worry about that. And truth be told, our church went from struggling and having a budget of $64,000 to very quickly being a church that we've never, in the last 15 years, ever struggled to meet our budget. We've increased numerically member-wise, we've increased financially, and we've come to the point where our budget's a $250,000, and we give above our budget. We send to Project Mexico. We've sent 100 different volunteers over 9 years, where we have to raise $25,000 a year when we send these groups of $25,000 to go build homes in Mexico, to participate in Habitat for Humanity locally, to do other projects of outreach. So initially we had reservations. That parish council member who didn't want to have a line item for global missions or national missions or local missions. When I first suggested that I'm going to take a group to Project Mexico. I remember very clearly, I had a couple parish council members who were adamantly opposed to us going to Mexico.
Yeah.
And I was taken aback because I had just served, my wife and I had just served for 10 years as missionaries in post-communist Albania. And here I come to Little Webster and I said, I'm going to go to Mexico. And someone's telling me, you can't go. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not asking you. I mean, I'm simply informing you I'm going to Mexico. And if anyone wants to come with me, I'm going to take them with me. And I'm informing you that that's what it means to be the church. We're going to go do that.
Reach out.
And so the first year we took, I think, 5 people to Mexico. The last 4 years, we've taken 25 people each year to Mexico. And that Mexico experience, letting people encounter what it means to cross a culture, be in San Diego one moment, and then you cross the border and you're in an entirely different world.
Right.
Sleeping in tents, building simple homes in 4 days for families. And the home that you build in 4 days is incredibly better than the house that they've lived in all their life. It's just incredible. So initially I had some reservations of what we're doing. But in the last years, my community has been so supportive. Anything that we do, they're open and ready and excited. You know, we are.
What is the size of your parish now, Father? How many families do you have there?
We have around 160 families.
Wow, that's incredible.
Not a large community. When I came here, we had around 80 families on the books. And
okay. So I want to share with you that the reaction you received is also the reaction I received when we began OCN 27 years ago. I remember sitting with members of my parish council, and they said, what do you mean you're going to reach outside of the parish? We haven't even reached the people inside the parish. What are you going to do? Put an antenna on top of the dome? One guy actually got up and like this, you know. And I said, sir, first of all, the antenna is implantation. It's WSRF. It's down the way. And I said, now we're going to reach 10,000 people. And today we reach about 1 million people every month in 190 countries. So the reason I'm saying that is not to brag. The reason I'm saying it is that the finger of the Lord is there. His spirit is there. And the missionary work you did and are continuing to do is holy work. And when we reach out as you've done, people will respond. It's just phenomenal. This is an incredible story. And more people have to hear this story, this turning inward and then moving them to turn outward. Now, was there something else you wanted to say?
Well, and I think, you know, in a day and age in America where we are in a post-Christian culture,
sure.
We can read for the last 20 years, especially, the statistics and numbers of how more and more people are leaving the church, no longer religious, you know, who are a-religious, not nuns, as we call them, none of the above, religious. So we have a society for the first time, you know, the Gallup poll showed 3 months ago, for the first time in the last 80 years, less than 50%, 47% of Americans
That's right.
claim a membership to a community of faith. So in a time when people are apathetic or even antagonistic against community of faith,
sure.
we need to show the world at large, we need to show them who we are, why we exist. So you know, when I presented to my parish council, I said, I want to do this project, this medical debt, RIP medical debt project, for 3 reasons. The first reason, I said, I want to remind our own parishioners why we exist as a church. We exist to be a light to the world. We are blessed not to keep our own blessings, but to share God's blessings with the world. So one of my favorite verses in the scripture is from Genesis chapter 12, when God calls Moses, and God says to Moses, I will bless you so that through you, all the families of the world will be blessed. And I said, this is the motto of our Christian faith. We are blessed not to keep the blessings to ourselves. We are blessed so that we share the blessings with the world at large. So my first goal was to have our community understand we're blessed. Our small little community is deeply blessed in many ways. We have to continue sharing that blessings. That's the first thing. The second thing, I wanted people, random people, these 2,200 families that received a letter to discover their medical debt that they've been stressing over for the last years is wiped out. So I want these people, these families, to understand there's a community of faith that doesn't know them, that cares about them. There's a God out there that they may not know, and then they may even ignore or deny that God cares about them. And so they, instead of hearing all the negative press about the scandals and the problems and the difficulties of the church, they receive a beautiful message about the
Faith
church.
in action.
Right.
Definitely faith in action.
And then the third goal I had was I was hoping that by us doing something like this, exactly what you're doing, Father Chris, you would interview me, other people would hear about it, and other people, other churches would imitate what we did. So, with our good and faithful steward challenge, when we gave out $30,000, 2 churches I know imitated us and have done the same thing.
It's good. That's great.
$40,000. And now with this medical debt relief, I've had maybe 7 or 8 priests who've contacted me, and 2 priests I know who've already reached out to RIP Medical Relief, medical debt, to see how their churches can get involved in this. So
All right, let me stop you there and let me put in a shameless plug. And I will say that anyone listening here this evening or today, depending on where you're listening from, Father Luke, I'm sure you're open to people contacting you, right, about this?
of course, everyone is welcome.
Okay, so let's imitate what Father Luke has done with his fabulous parish. The best way to grow orthodoxy is literally to give it away. If you're holding it to your chest and you're only by yourself, then you will die by yourself. And that's what will happen to the church. If we do what he's saying here, it's fantastic. You're talking about a multiplier that we've never seen before. So I hope and pray those of you on or those of you listening will contact Father Luke and learn from him what he's done. And God willing, you'll be able to bless people that are within your parish. Sometimes people will ask, I know they did to me, Father, who are your parishioners? I tell them where they're from. Literally at that time, they were driving 50 miles to come to our church. They were passing other churches, but they came to our church. No, that's not my question, Father. How about your neighborhood? Who in your neighborhood is attending your church anymore? When your church was built 50 years ago, yeah, everybody lived in the neighborhood, but now they're gone. And what have you done, Father, to your neighbors? Have you reached your neighbors? That's what we're supposed to do. It's not about, this, let me protect it. Let me keep it to myself. I mean, that's very selfish. I would say that's anti-gospel. I don't know how you feel, Father Luke, but that's my feeling.
One of my favorite quotes, one of my spiritual mentors and spiritual guides is Archbishop Anastasios Yanolatos, who was the Archbishop in East Africa when I lived in Kenya. And then he became the Archbishop of Albania for the last 30 years when my wife and I served under him in Albania. So he's the greatest missionary in the Orthodox world today and a great theologian, great hierarch.
Tremendous individual, tremendous individual.
One of my favorite quotes from Archbishop Anastasios, he says, what is the opposite of love? And so the typical person will say, well, the opposite of love is hate. He says, the opposite of love is the ego, because love is outward turned. The ego is inward turned. Whenever we become inward turned, and the ego, we can express that individually, but we can also express that communally. Our churches, our families. When someone says, oh, my family is everything, everything's about me and my family and my people and my church and my, that's all egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
true agape love, divine love, is always concerned going outward. So, like you just said, Father Chris, to your neighbor who's right next door to our church, as well as to your neighbor who is next to our country in Mexico, as well as to your neighbor in the global village around the world in Kenya or Indonesia or Pakistan or wherever else. So,
And there's no, people will say, well, why don't you just minister to your own? Why don't you just take care of your own? Well, we do take care of our own, but then we have to imbue within our own, so to speak, the ability to go out and share what they have and share who they've become, that joy of the gospel. That's the key. Let me do this with Noel. Noel, let me go to you and see if we have any questions that we can pose to our very special guest tonight, Father Luke Veronis.
Yeah, well, I'll start. We have a lot of positive comments in the chat. Maria said, Father Luke is truly guided by the true light of Christ, an amazingly spiritual leader. I would agree with that. And James said, this is why the Holy Gospel on St. Matthew is read to remind us of spreading the gospel and to spread the holy Christian faith. We can increase our talents by investing and multiplying our members for our church. And a question is, for the Good and Faithful challenge that you did, what percentage of your parish would you say participated in that?
So we were very conscious in reaching out, and we made sure that we gave every parishioner a cash gift, including the parishioners. So when I say we have 160 families or individuals or family stewardship units that are part of our church, some of them rarely come to church or never come to church. And so I'll be honest with you, I was tempted to say, well, should we send even those people this gift? They're not coming to church to get it. Should we send it to them? And then I thought to myself, this is a great way to reach out to them, to let them know, boy, are they going to be shocked to get a letter from our church
That's
with
right.
a cash of $100 in it or $200 in it. And we're asking them use this. And so I explained it. So literally I could say we gave money to 100% of our parishioners. And I would say we probably got a response. I got a response back from probably 80% of them or 90% of them. They told me what they did with the money. So it was really.
Any of them give you the money back?
So there were a couple people out of 160, maybe 5 or less that actually they gave the money back, and they said, yeah, they didn't know what to do with it. Or a couple people, we have a couple people gave us the money and said, use this toward one of our other ministries. So one of the other ways we reach out to the larger community, and this is an after effect of going to Project Mexico. So we go to Project Mexico, and some people are saying, Father, why are you going all the way to Mexico to help build homes? What are you doing locally?
Yeah.
And so I would say, great question. What are you doing locally? I'd say to them, what do you want to do? What can we do? And we were involved with Habitat for Humanity. We were involved with the homeless shelter in the neighboring town. We're involved in the local food share. But I said, what can we do? So one of the people who has come to Project Mexico numerous times, he helped to spearhead an idea saying, okay, in our local town, we have 3 other churches that offer a meal twice a month. And we live in a town that's a lower income town. And so these 3 other churches offer a meal twice a month. And so we said, let's get involved with that. We'll offer a meal. And we started offering what we call the Living Bread Luncheon, the first Saturday of every month. And now I said to our church, okay, we're going to do this Living Bread Luncheon. And my intention was for the poor people of our town. I have people come and ask for help, whatever.
Sure.
Can we do this for the poor people in town? What actually happened is we get some of the needy people in town, but what actually happened is this meal, the majority of people come are elderly people maybe who are poor, but some of them who are looking for fellowship. And what I made sure that our community does is we don't offer a soup kitchen. I said, we want to make this an event. Anyone who comes to our church, we want them to feel like they are special guests. So our hall is a beautiful hall. We decorate it well. We have delicious food. We welcome people at the door as soon as they walk in our church. Um, we sit down with them, talking to them. So it's so fascinating. Our meal begins at 12:30 on the first Saturday of every month.
Mhm.
We literally, I'm not exaggerating, we literally get people coming in at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. They come in, and the first time I saw people coming in at 10 o'clock, I said to them, "Oh, I'm very sorry. We're not serving until 12:30." And they're like, "Oh, we know. That's okay. We just went. It's so comfortable here." We had coffee and donuts for them while they waited. They would just sit down, and then we'd have groups of people coming. These old people would come with their cards, and they'd sit down at one of the tables. They'd be playing cards at one table. They'd be sitting around at the other table, and literally, they come. They sit for 2 hours, have a delicious meal, and then leave. And some of these elderly people tell me it's the highlight of their month to come to our church. Um, so it's just another way that we reach. At one time, maybe the only thing our church was known for in Webster would have been the Greek festival.
Sure.
You have a good, delicious Greek food once a
Yeah.
year, the Greek festival. And I said to my church council, to my people, it's great to have the Greek festival. That's a great tool. It's a
Sure.
beautiful kind of fellowship. It's wonderful to offer that. So that's nothing wrong with that. But I said, I don't want us to be known for the Greek festival.
Yep.
And so now we are a church that our community knows, oh, that's the church that gave $30,000 to its people. Oh, that's the church that paid off the medical debt for 2,200 families. Oh, that's the church that offers that living bread luncheon where we feel
Yes.
so good every month. Oh, that's the church that has an AA meeting on Sunday nights where 100 people come to the open AA meeting on Sunday nights. Oh, that's more and more what we want to be known for. We are
Okay.
the light of Christ.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you how else does the church try to reach out to a larger community, but you just mentioned 4 or 5 ways. Those are incredible ways. Let's go back to Noel and see if we have any other questions from our guests that are watching us this evening.
Yeah, so related to that, although you already partially answered this question, do you have any ideas for other outreach projects that you'd like to try, or maybe suggestions for other churches to get started with one of these projects?
So I'll share with you a secret. I've talked with my parish council about this, but I haven't talked with my community at large.
Uh-huh.
The next idea that I want to do, and that is, I was going to do this possibly this fall, but because of COVID, I think I'm going to wait until next year, next September, and I want to have a year of hospitality at our church. And what my vision is for this year of hospitality, I'm going to prepare my community and do a 4-part sermon series on hospitality. I'm going to do a 6-part Bible study series looking at different passages about hospitality, the ancient practice of hospitality, where, the Greek word for hospitality, philoxenia, which means friend of the stranger, making the stranger your friend. And so what I want to do, this isn't going to be an evangelistic outreach. It's going to be more of getting to know your neighbor. And my idea is once a month, I'm going to try to create a relationship with different communities that surround us and invite them to our church to have a meal together. So, for example, in our little town, we have a Hindu temple, lots of Indians. One of my neighbors, one of my son's best friends is an Indian. So the first month, we're going to invite the Hindu Indian community to come together, maybe 20 people from their community, 20 people from our church. We sit together, mixed at different tables. Maybe we have someone from their community speak about what it's like to be Hindu in America. We can talk about our own tradition, and it's just getting to know our Hindu brothers and sisters. The next month, I'll invite the Muslim community in Worcester to come to meet with us. The next week, we'll reach out to the Hispanic community. You know, we talk about these illegal immigrants, and we create caricatures and we demonize the illegal immigrants, people coming up from Mexico or whatever. I want us to sit down and have a meal and listen, share stories, listen to stories where we get to see them not as whatever label we place, but as human beings who are just like us. So then the Mexican community, the Hispanic community, the what we have in our town, we have a number of African caretakers, these elderly, I mean, these African women who've taken care of a number of my own parishioners, and we've become friends with them. And so, how about inviting these African caretakers to come and listen to their stories and listen to what it's like to be a caretaker 24/7, and all the money you make. My people think, oh, we give them a lot of money. They make a lot of money. Well, all the money they make, they send back to their families to support
That's right.
Germany or Ghana or wherever else. I mean, let's hear their story. Then I think then this is where I want to get a little challenging and say, okay, one of the months, can we invite the LGBTQ community and listen to their stories without judgment? Without we're not. This isn't to convert and this isn't to judge. It's to get to know, to listen to their stories. And then I thought, you know, another month we could have the disabled community, another month the elderly community, another month the AA group that meets in our church. They meet in our church every Sunday night, but we don't have any interaction with them as a community. Let's have a meal together with them as a community. And then the most difficult, the last month, I'm going to save this for the last month so it doesn't destroy the whole year of hospitality. I thought the last month we'll get together Democrats and Republicans and have them together at the same table and see if we can get along and see the humanity of one another and
Good
stop
luck
the
with that one.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous. I think.
Well, Father, what you're saying is just incredible. You think out of the box, but I would share with us that the reason you are able to do this is that you are secure in who you are and you believe in the Holy Trinity. You believe and you live and you walk the talk. Because if you didn't have that security, you would not be able to say, okay, come on in, folks, let's have a conversation here. And that, I believe, is what many of us are lacking within our communities. We don't actually believe. For example, today I told you that we moved my wife to her final resting place. And we put at the bottom of our tombstone, we believe in the resurrection of the dead and the life of the age to come. Either we believe this or we don't. It's either toinemas, it's who we are, or it's just a game. It's a social club. It looks nice, we look nice, we put on a nice scularicia, and we go to church and we look great. But what is the essence of who we are? And I believe that the Lord has blessed you. I know you and your family, I know your parents. You have been in mission work for, God knows how long. Probably your dad and mom were the founders of the mission work here in the United States of America. And you have been able to carry that torch, I would say, in a remarkable way. I'm so proud to call you a brother in Christ. I really, really am. You're doing magnificent work.
Thank you, Father.
Let's see if we have any other thoughts. We're coming towards the end of our program for today, but let's see if Noel has any more questions that we can pose to Father Luke. He's certainly not without ideas, so that's good.
Well, we have a lot of comments mostly.
Okay, all right.
Xenia mentioned, you did mention disability as a part of it, but specifically that autistic people, other neurodivergent people may have difficulty making friends and community connections, and the church can be a place for that. And James also says to love our neighbor is to get to know our neighbor by listening to their stories. I'm thinking myself about, I've never heard somebody say that they were turned off from the church because of choirs or icons or liturgy. It's always because they didn't feel loved or they didn't feel listened to. I think
Good point.
a lot
That's
of
another
people
good point.
that.
Another very good point.
Like Father Chris just said, we have to be secure in who we are. Christ encountered others who were a scandal to society, and he would treat them with love and respect. It didn't mean that he agreed with the tax collectors who were stealing from the people. It didn't mean that he agreed with Saint Fautini, because even though she was married 5 times, it didn't mean that he agreed with the prostitutes or the sinners. but he would meet them, treat them with love, see the beauty in the other, regardless of how damaged the icon of God would be in them. He would find the beauty and call forth that beauty. So, I think some of us feel that we need to judge others, and if we talk to others or if we listen to their story, that means we are affirming their lifestyle, their mistakes, their sins. That's not the case. We can meet people where they're at, love them for who they are, deep down, children of God, see beauty, find beauty, listen to their stories, and discover their humanity, so that instead of labels that separate us from one another, that divide us from one another, we find commonalities that can draw us closer together. I mean, especially this year of hospitality, I think is so relevant, especially as our country becomes more and more divided.
Yes.
We live in our own bubbles. We put labels that demonize and characterize those who don't think like we do or believe like we do. And we think we're happy. And many of us hide behind our own cloak of pseudo Christianity by judging and condemning the others. So it's a
Good
challenge.
points. Good points. Father Luke, it's been an honor to have you with us this evening. I want to thank you sincerely on behalf of all of our listeners around the world for what you're doing. Folks, I really encourage you that if you like what you're hearing and you want to emulate what you hear, which I hope you will, that you contact Father Luke at his church, and we'll put some of the information in our social media and on our website so that folks can get to you. Father Luke, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Father Chris, for the opportunity to come here, and thank everyone. I thank everyone for coming to listen. And I leave you with the challenge of go back to your parishes and see what your parishes are growing to be a light to the larger community. And this, whether it's the RIP medical debt, it's a real simple way to reach out to the larger community, or whether it's doing the good and faithful stewardship challenge, or whether it's starting something like the Living Bread Luncheon, whatever ways you can start. And you can start in small ways. It doesn't have to be big. Start in small.
Right. Well, this platform is here for you, Father. So whenever you come up with these ideas and you want to share them around the world, we're here for you. Okay?
Thank you very much, Father Chris.
Very good. Let's close with a prayer. And then we have some closing remarks that Noel will give, and I will give some announcements that we do have. And you can stay on if you'd like for a few minutes afterwards as we stop our recording, and we can discuss some other things if you'd like to. Our souls yearn for you in the night, O our Lord, for your judgments are light on earth. Give us the wisdom to work justice and holiness in this world, so that your name may be glorified. Help us to help others see you, O Lord, in every person that we meet. Help us to create opportunities for all peoples of the world to know you without the fear of being persecuted. For it is you we glorify, our true God. Incline your ear and heed us. And remember, Lord, by name, those who are here with us, praying with us, and safeguard them in your might. Amen.